Hi, it's Lavender Warrior here. Now we're going to get into part 4 of our step 1, determining your needs for your apartment series. So the thing that we're going to cover today is determining your budget. Now we're going to go into steps of your budget and what is important and what's not important. Let's get into the video. Hi y'all, just so you know, I am not giving financial advice. This is not legal advice. This is strictly my opinion and my opinion only, and what's helped me determine my own apartment needs. Just for clarity, for any legal instances out there that may want to, do the most. It's literally my opinion. I'm not giving anybody financial, legal, or any other advice that you would stake your opinion on and determine how you operate. All right, so the first step in getting your budget established is to determine your income. Your income is based on your pay stubs that you get in, all after taxes. So it would be after your federal taxes, after state taxes, after local taxes, after any deductions that you may or may not have or garnishments with the IRS, and it's after the Medicare, my notes. After the Medicare and Social Security tax. So once all of those are accounted for and out of the way, it is that remainder of money that you're going to be making your budget with. So it's very important to see clearly what money you actually have, not just on paper, but you actually tangibly have, like your net income. So it's definitely important for that. And with that set amount of money, you're going to want to really figure out what you have. If you have any side hustles, you want to count them in. If they are reliable income that you have coming in, you want to count that into your budget. And then from there, determine what's available for you and what's not. Now, going forward, we're going to hit on step number 2, point number 2 in this video. Figuring out your expenses. The expensive factor is really ideal and really good. Now you want to figure out your expenses and whatnot. And this is considering the rent where you're currently at, not considering the rent going forward. You would deduct that later. But you consider your rent, your utilities, then any, I have notes, then any insurance for your apartment, townhome, or condominium. Figuring out your expenses is the next step. You account for rent, utilities, your renter's insurance, health insurance, any other insurances, depending upon if you're in any other fields such as law, medical, or civil engineering. Any of those other insurances that you have that you're accounting for, you'll figure those out. In addition to food, transportation, travel, your car note, car insurance, maintenance, any loans that you may be paying, student loans, for all of you who know that status currently. You want to account for your clothes, any miscellaneous items, subscriptions, anything like that. You're going to want to put those all in a budget to determine what that number is, and then account for it and tally it up. Your third step in determining your budget is going to be separating your expenses from your income. Basically, you're just subtracting it. So you are going to have your income and then that minus your expenses. Now, if your expenses are greater, or you could just do a side-by-side comparison, honestly, and then subtract those. If your expenses are greater than your income, you're going to want to axe and get rid of some things on your expenses side, whether that be subscriptions, unnecessary spending, or the most important part of it all, honestly, is the rent. So you're going to want to make a note, and if your rent is super high, you're going to want to get out of that apartment, get to another apartment where you can afford, and balance out your finances that way. This way your budget is balanced, or at least equal, but preferably you have a little bit more surplus coming in than going out. Now, the next step that you're going to want to pay attention to is then to calculate what you will be able to afford in the new rent. So you're considering the rent you currently have with the utilities and insurance and all the other expenses that you currently have, and then see what rent you'll be able to afford with all the other expenses minus the current rent. So if you already, let's say your rent is about $1,800, right? And you're only getting $3,200 in, that's not a lot of money left over when you consider all the other expenses that you have to account for, especially like electric or gas, water, sewage, and then your insurance, your phone bill, your health insurance, any other insurance that you have that's respective to your career, or even if you're taking care of children. That's a whole different gamut of expenses. So then you have to account for doctor's visits, school functions, uniforms if they have it, school material, any of the other medicine or clothes, and additional food. So that's going to be a lot to consider. So you want to make sure that your rent can afford it. And when doing that, you'll be able to get a better gauge of what you'll be actually able to realistically afford when taking into account of any savings goals that you have as well. And honestly, the general rules of thumb are for calculating your budget and figuring out what you'll be able to afford is to spend no more than 30% of your income. You can either do the year version or you can do the monthly version. I do the monthly version. Counting percent of no more than 30% of your income for that allotted time for rent. And then from there, with whichever new apartment you're able and you're looking into, you want to make sure that you make at least 3 times the rent on average. Those are typically the requirements. Sometimes it can be less, sometimes it can be more. But you want to make sure you're getting into a decent apartment that you're going to fit the requirements of that apartment as well. Step number 5 is to determine what type of budget that you would want to consider. There are many budgets out there. Now here we are going to go over some type of budget that I've come across, and these are the most common budgets from what I've seen from doing research on this topic. So you have, flipping the page, you have your zero-based budget, then you have your pay yourself first budget, then you have the envelope budget, and then you have the no budget, and then you have the 50-30-20 budget. Being the zero budget, which is the one I do, I prefer that one. You start with your income. This is going back to step number 1, determining what your income is. Once you have done that, this is going to be all your net income that's coming in after all the taxes, after all the deductions, after everything that the government wants to take out. After that's done, then that's the number you're working with, plus whatever side income you have coming in from any side hustle or any other circumstance. But to calculate that to the exact number and write that down and have that as a total. So from there, for the expensive side of it, I'll start off with rent. That can be $1,600. Then you're going to go to the electricity bill, which is going to be maybe $200. Then you're going to go to your gas, sewer, and water, which can be anywhere from like $20 to $150, or any other number for that matter. And then you're going to go from there to your insurance, your renter's insurance, your health insurance, your career insurance. Then you're going to go to food, which can be like $400. Then you're going to go to travel. If you take Uber all the time, if you do not have a car, then you're going to account for travel either with your cars or your transportation, your private ride shares, or your transportation, public like buses, trains, or anything like that. So you're going to account for those. And then from there, if you have a car, you're going to account for that, your car note, your maintenance, the gas, you're going to account for all those things. And then from there, you're going to go even further. Then you're going to account for your phone bill, you're going to account for your internet bill, you're going to account, if you have a storage, you're going to account for your storage. If you have children, you're going to account for everything that relates to children, food, medicine, clothing, school supplies, activities that you want to do with your child or children. And then you're going to account for all the other miscellaneous items such as medicine, first aid, safety stuff, you know, like a whole 9. So you're going to go item and item by line by line by line until you get to 0, where you have no more money to spend. So then you're going to go into your savings as well if you have room for that. That will help you get a very, very crystal clear picture of what you're able to spend. Now the next method is to pay yourself first. Before you touch anything for your necessities, any of the money at all, you take a percentage out for yourself. Usually people do 10%. They take 10% out for themselves and they allocate that to discretionary spending such as savings or debt payments and whatnot. So you want to make sure that you're taking a big amount out that will cover all your necessities, which are rent, utilities, food, and travel, and getting back and forth from work. So you want to make sure those are accounted for. The next type of budget is the envelope budget. Much like the zero budget, exactly the same, except you're working with physical cash and putting them into envelopes once you go to the bank and withdraw that amount of money for each section. So basically you do the envelope that you would want, and you basically do a zero budget, honestly, and then you put that amount, instead of just having it allocated in your mind or on a notebook or in an app or a tracker app or something like that, you're gonna have that in the cash in the envelopes. So you're gonna do the same thing like rent, utilities, phone bill, insurance, childcare, and all this other stuff. You're gonna go through all of that, but it's gonna be in envelope form. So it's gonna be in physical cash. Now, it's a lot of research behind it, whereas seeing physical cash is much better in terms of spending because you can actually see it leave your hand. So you're more cognizant of the actual money leaving your account versus you having your card everywhere and swiping and swiping and swiping and swiping, maybe until you get a decline, or maybe until you get a notification that, hey, you spent $200 like in the last 2 hours, you know. So you're gonna really want to have that and consider that idea for this method of budgeting. Now there's the other budget, simply called the no budget. Now, that one is a little tricky if your self-discipline is not up to par because if you do this budget, it can work, and it does work for some people, where you literally know what you have to spend, you know what you have to spend it on. The main thing of this budget is knowing what your due dates are and for all your bills, and making sure you can meet those, and literally just not spending money on what you don't have money to spend on. Now, it sounds incredibly simple. However, it is a very hard thing to do if people do not have their self-discipline and control up to par. If you are impulse driven, may not be a great budget for you. Just my personal opinion, may not be a great budget for you. Because if you're prone to impulse buying, that's a lack of no. So you might want to consider that. The next budget is the 50-30-20. 50%, you can also, with this budget, you can mold around the numbers. 50 is for the necessaries of your budget. It's for rent, utilities, and whatnot, and so on and so forth. And then the 20% is for your savings or debt, and then the 30% is discretionary spending. So you can do that budget if you want to. It does work for some people. However, it's not a very forgiving budget. So if you have this, then you have to adhere to it. However, you know, we're all grown adults. You can change it however you like to. However, it's just going to impact your ratio a lot if you do that. So these are just budgets to consider. I personally recommend the zero-based budgeting, or you can do the envelope one if you like to have cash on hand and you want to have it in an envelope. You can do that one too. That one works. Those are 5 budgets that can definitely help you. Now, the 5 ways you can save money is helpful as well. Let's go into those. I have 5 ways for you to keep saving your money, plus 2 bonuses. So stick around and then you'll get to the bonuses toward the end of the video. Now, we have number 1 is get smaller. What does that mean, Lavender? You could literally downsize your apartment, save your money. Like, that's the most concrete way to go about this. This way you cut down on your expenses because you're not paying for much, so you won't be charged much because you're getting a smaller space. And smaller space doesn't mean it's not going to be homey. It's just an adjustment in your space until your finances are where you want them to be, and then you can move from there, get a bigger house, get a bigger apartment, do what you want. But this is a good move for stability and also reining in your finances. Number 2, try the surrounding cities. What I mean by that is you're not going to want to live in the heart of the city, whether that's Atlanta, Chicago, New Orleans, Newark, New York, Houston, like LA, Oakland, San Antonio, Miami, Tampa, any of them, or even Raleigh or anything like that, or Fayetteville. You're going to want to live in the surrounding areas of those major cities because the cities are expensive. They are expensive. point blank period. They are expensive. So you want to make sure that you're in the surrounding areas, which is a little bit less expensive, and that will help you significantly rein in your finances. Okay, and the next step, get some buddies. I know not a lot of people like this part, but it's a possibility should this not be an absolute no for you. That is to get roommates. Roommates can definitely help cut the cost of the rent in half, in thirds, in quarters, depending on how big the apartment is or the house is. So it can help you definitely save money, because instead of paying $2,000 for a house by yourself, you can pay maybe $500 for 4 people living in the house. So it's a little bit better. It's a little bit more cost effective. Even if it was 2 people living in a house, that's $1,000 and $1,000 versus a whole $2,000 by yourself. It makes much more sense to do so if you're cool with that, if you like people, if you don't mind having to share your space. It's a perfect option for that. Next step, don't spend on unnecessary things. So that is another thing to help you save money. So instead of just impulsively, we've been all victims to this at one point or another, impulsively buying the thing you see advertised to you on Amazon, or the thing advertised to you on Instagram, or even Facebook for that matter, you want to hold off on that buy button just a little bit, just for a while, until your finances are where you want them to be. Because the unnecessary spending, even though it's $5 here, $10 here, you have $10 bills that make up $100, and then you have that throughout the rest of the year. We could do some quick math on that. Okay, so you have $10 times 5 days a week, because you know, you go to Starbucks, you get a coffee, and you get one of those little ice pop things, or the little tray with the little food, snacks, and whatnot. So let's say that equals $10, right? So you get that every day before you go into work, 5 days a week. So you have the 10 multiplied by 5, that's $50 a week. Then you have that multiplied by, because you don't go into work every single week, and counting for holidays and whatnot. So you go into work maybe like 48 weeks out of the year. So that is simply going to be $2,400 you have spent on coffee and the little Starbucks snacks, or cake pops, or desserts, or little pastries. That's going to be $2,400 you spent on that, which is a breakdown of $10 a day, 5 days a week, for about 40 weeks out the year. Differently, it may seem like a small amount of money to some, however, that can definitely impact your budgets though. And it doesn't usually get counted in your budget because you think it's just coffee, it's just this. So you want to be very careful about what you put your money to. The last and final step is get an additional bank account. You can either do a checking, or you can do a savings account with like a high yield savings account if you want to. And that can definitely help you save your money, because if you can't see it in your main account, it won't be there for you to spend mentally. Now, that doesn't always translate well, because people, you know, sometimes are a little analytical, so they like to see all their money all the time, everywhere, at any given moment. That doesn't help with spending all the time. But if you are good at putting money somewhere and then forgetting about it, a savings account is perfect. A checking account that is not connected to your phone, that you literally have to go to the bank to look at, is a good idea as well, simply because it's out of sight, out of mind, but it's also not just gone in the other, you know, it's in a bank, it's protected. So it's good to get an FDIC insured bank. This way, if anything happens to the bank, you get your money back. Up to $250,000, I believe, for most banks and whatnot. But you can look up the law yourself and to be double sure about that and whatnot. But other than that, those are the 5. Now here are the 2 bonus tips. One is sales. Sales, 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 sales. So you're going to want to have a good knack for couponing. That could save you money, believe it or not. There are so many memes and jokes and little skits about this lady who brings a stack of coupons the size of 3 encyclopedias and to the cash register, and then ends up walking away with a $5 bill versus a $250 bill. So those coupons do work. Now, it just requires diligence and a little bit of forethought, but other than that, they do work, and it will save you money, especially when clothes are considered, food is considered, even some buy one get one free off of utilities or phones. You know, they have sales. You just have to keep up with it. And the last tip is do not stop what you're doing. So once you have budgeted for your apartment, continue to keep that habit up. That will save you the most money. Being frugal, being aware of your finances, being aware of your money will definitely help you retain more money even after your goal is met. This way you can allocate that money to something different, whether you want to go back to school, get a car, engage in a hobby or passion you've always wanted to do. You'll have the money to do that. Or if you wanted to get into investing or stocks or something similar, you could definitely do that because you'll have the money saved up for those things. So I hope this has been a helpful video to you. If you want to tune in, that would be greatly appreciated. The way you can do that is if you hit the subscribe button, then click the notification bell, and this way you will get more information as we go along. The next video in this series is going to be step 2 to understanding what we're going into next for the next video. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.